Hey there guys, and welcome back to part 3, where we're going to be taking a look at how we can do some animation and rendering and setting up our scene all ready for post-production. So this is where we left off, and let's get straight into it. Let's grab our lights here under our environment and let's actually animate these from start to finish. So let's maybe increase our timeline to maybe about 200 frames a second, drag that out, make sure we're on frame 0, and let's just grab this top left light up here. We'll go under the coordinates and let's select all our positions, and we'll just set. Actually, you know what? We can actually just select our X position, which is left and right. And we'll just set a keyframe for that. And let's scrub forward, maybe we'll do 200 frames, and we'll just increase that over to the right side there, and we'll set another keyframe there. So you see that's very basic stuff, but we're getting this nice sweep across the top of our text. And we'll just repeat the process with this light. So again, our second light, we'll set one just for X in the coordinates, make sure you're on frame 0, and we'll scrub to 200 frames, and we'll drag this the opposite way over here. And set another keyframe. So if we actually turn off our display to Georgiiou shading, we can scrub through here. And if we go to our filter and turn off our lights, you can actually see it a little bit clearer there. This is what we're getting. Cool, so let's move on. We've also got this light number 2, which is our overall light, just to get those nice highlights there, and we can actually set that to 0 on the intensity at frame 0, and we'll scrub forward maybe to about 70 frames, and we'll just increase that up just a little bit there, just to get these nice highlights on the top of our text, and we'll actually render that out just to see what we're getting. Cool, that's looking quite nice there. Sweet. So moving on. Let's duplicate our main text. We'll hold Control, click and drag to create a duplicate there. And let's go to our coordinates and let's actually offset this back in Z space there. And we're just kind of creating a separate layer behind it. Something maybe like that, which is not too bad there. So that's looking pretty cool. Nice. Let's grab a camera and we'll look through that camera, and let's go ahead and we'll set up some cool camera angles. Now I like to be in the coordinates, and you can play around with these values here just to get some really dynamic looking angles that we can play with. So let's maybe something like this. It's looking nice. We'll set a keyframe, and again I'm doing this fairly quickly, but we'll do it on the position and on the rotations at frame 0. We'll scrub forward to maybe around 60, and let's just increase that up and try and get something looking cool. Something like that. Change values again. Remember to click the positions till they turn red, and we'll actually highlight these keyframes down at the timeline, and we'll change the interpolation to linear. And you'll see now it's just going to be a nice constant movement throughout. So that's looking pretty good. So let's move on to our shot 2. We'll grab another camera and we'll look through that camera, and we'll just reset these values to 0 again. And let's try grab another cool camera angle. So let's go over to this O here. We'll zoom in, and actually let's start at the top. Nice and high. We'll click on the camera, let's set our keyframes and for the position as well, and let's rotate that a little bit. Again, scrub forward to maybe around 60-70 frames. We'll push it down here, move it up, push it down. And we want to keep this fairly circular and centralized, and we'll again add these keyframes, highlight, and set them to linear. Now let's play through that. Cool, that's a nice close-up detailed shot there, looking really cool. Let's actually go to our object and let's pull back on the focal length just so we can get a bit more detail around the sides here, just so we can see it a little bit more. Looking really cool. Let's go back to our reference video here, and I'm actually going to try and recreate this camera angle here now. Play through. You see the text smashes in and then camera pulls out into place. So let's go ahead and do that. That's really easy to do. We'll grab another camera We'll look through it again, we'll set the values back to 0. And let's position our text how we want it to look at the end of the animation. So we'll maybe have it somewhere around here. Let's zoom down. Somewhere like that. We'll click on our camera and we'll set the position and rotation keyframes. And I've done it on 39, but let's actually drag this keyframe forward to maybe about 140 frames there. And then let's scrub back to frame 0. We'll zoom in. And we'll just offset it to the side, and we'll try and set up here how we want it to look at the start of the animation. So maybe around here is quite good. We'll set the keyframes. And you'll see when we actually play through now, it's not quite perfect there, as our text actually isn't staying central. Now the way I went to fix that was we can create a new null object, and we'll rename this to targets. Spell it correctly there, and we'll come out of our camera and let's position this null object right in the center of our text there. It's probably something like here. Hopefully that's in the center, looking good. Let's go back into our camera, and on our camera let's right click, Cinema4D tags, and add a target. And for that target object we're going to use that null. We'll drag that in, and you see now when we play through, the camera's going to be constantly looking at that center point, so we're getting this really cool smooth animation there. That's looking really nice, pretty cool. But I want to change the speed, so let's go to our window, open up the timeline, and we'll drag in our camera to there just so we get that one object, and we'll bring down the rotation and position. If we highlight them all and hit H on the keyboard, and we'll also click this button here, and also we'll just highlight those again and hit H, and that brings everything into view. Now this is what's actually happening within our camera. So let's drag the first, all of the keyframes. We'll hold shift and we'll drag these forward. We'll hold control and shift, just to keep it nice and linear. We'll bring those out so it's a nice smooth start. And we'll drag, highlight our end keyframes, and again we'll hold control and we'll just drag those really far out. So you'll see now our camera's going to come in smooth, drop down really quick, and then smooth out again towards the end. So let's have a look how that's looking. We'll play through. That's looking really nice. Cool, I'm pretty happy with that. We'll try and keep this tutorial short, but that's looking pretty good. I quite like that. Finally, let's add some quick animation to our text. Let's give it that really nice impact smashing effect. So what we can actually do, I'm trying to think the best way to do this. In our original example, you'll see I actually separated each letter out. So we have the middle letters coming in there, and the other one's already there. But let's we can keep it simple. Let's grab our main text. We'll look back through our camera. Okay. Okay, let's do it. Let's group these two main texts together. We can highlight them both and do Alt-G, Alt or Command if you're on a Mac, and we can group those up, and we'll call this text or text final. And let's go into its coordinates. So let's say we want the smash to happen at around 30 frames. We'll hit a keyframe on the Z position, and we'll scrub back to 0, and let's just move it back in Z space there. Quite far. Let's set another keyframe. And you see now when we play it through, it smashes in there. Not quite as much as I want. So let's go ahead and improve that. Let's go back to our timeline, and we'll drag in our text final where we added those keyframes. So let's close these up. Hit H on the keyboard, and you can see now this is kind of too smooth. We want it to really smash in at the end, not smooth out. So let's highlight this keyframe, and we'll just hold control, and we'll drag that in a little bit. And we'll actually highlight the first one, and we'll drag that out. Just so now it's going to start off slow, and then go smash right into it at the bottom. So how is that looking? Boom. A little bit nicer. Let's highlight our end keyframe, let's drag it in maybe 20 frames just to speed up the animation. There we go. Now we're getting some nice smashing impact there. And then the quick zoom out. Let's speed that zooming out a little bit up. Select our camera, hit H, and we'll highlight these end keyframes again, and let's just drag those out a little bit more. And actually, we'll tone that down a little bit. So it does require a lot of tweaking and a little detail-y stuff, but in the end it's definitely worth it. You'll see now we're getting this really powerful kind of thing, and we'll get some camera shake in that in post, but at the minute this is looking good for our CG. Let's do a quick render here, see what it's looking like. So that's looking really cool. I'm liking that neon and the cool texture on top. I think let's say we're done. Let's start getting ready to render. So let's go into our text final and our main text, which I believe is the front layer. Yep. Now in our main text, we want to separate out these in our compositing. So an easy way to do that, we can go to our edge, we'll right click, Cinema4D tags, compositing, and we'll go to object buffer and we'll enable for number 1. And now since we have 2 texts, let's actually copy that compositing tag onto the other edge one. As you can see there, these are both the same. And we'll go down the list. So let's do the fill, right click, Cinema4D tags, add a compositing tag, and this wants to be different to number 1. So we'll enable number 2, and again drag that onto the fill. And actually let's keep these organized there. So you see we have 1 and 2, and then it's the same for our layer behind. And we'll just keep doing this. We'll do our face, Cinema4D tags, compositing, and we'll enable number 3. We'll drag that onto our second face, and again number 4 for the outline. Now what these do, it just renders out a separate Luma channel, so you can separate them in post and you just get a little bit more control over your text. So that's looking great. That's nice. I like that. Let's also separate our subtext. So we'll close these down. We'll add another one, compositing, object buffer, and we'll add number 5. Cool. I think that's looking pretty good. Let's head into our render settings and we'll set some stuff up here. We'll do 1920 by 1080. We'll do all frames. And in fact, you know what? Since we have 3 different cameras, we have 3 different shots. So we have our first shot here. Sorry, this one's our first shot. Smash there. We've got our second shot here where it smashes in there. And then we've got our final shot where it does that there. Cool. So let's rename this to shot 1 on our first camera, our second camera shot 2, and our third camera shot 3. So let's go into our render settings here and let's set up our multipasses. Now the way we render out our object buffers is if we go to our multipass and we'll go to our multipass tab here, we'll add the object buffer, and that's going to add group ID 1. Now we've got 5 of them, so let's go and add another one, and we'll change that one to 2. Add another one, change that to 3. Add another one, whoops. Add another one there, change that to 4, and add one last one, we'll change that to 5. And you'll see now we've got our 5 object buffers set up. And to keep it nice and organized, let's rename these. So our edge is object buffer 1, so we can rename this to edge. Our fill is object buffer 2, so we can rename that one. Our face is object buffer 3, make sure that's 3. Outline is number 4, and I remember our subtext is number 5, so now we know we've got these nice organized object buffers set up there. And we've also got our ambient occlusion turned on, which we did at the start. You just have to make sure to turn it off in apply to project, and it's actually going to render out separately there. So let's have a look what other multipasses we can do. We can actually add a reflection, and let's add an atmosphere which actually renders out the lights as well. So that's looking really cool. We'll save that, go back into here, We can play around with the ray depth and maybe turn it down to 5. Our reflection we'll leave on 3. And our shadow maybe 5 as well. Make sure blurriness is ticked as well. Even though it'll slow down your render times, it gives a nice result. So this is kind of the effect we're getting. Boom, boom, boom. Cool. So let's do this. Our shot 1, we'll make sure we are looking through our camera for shot 1, and this is only 0 to 60 frames long before the animation runs out. So we'll go to our render settings here, we'll go to the output, we'll make sure it's from 0 to 60. We'll save that. And we'll start rendering these out. So then obviously all you do is choose your file output path. So the format, we want it to be a RPF. And in the options, let's make sure that Z is ticked on, because this is how we do our depth path. So we'll hit OK. And let's actually just choose a quick location. Go to our series here. Let's make a new file, we'll call it CG renders. And we'll go in, let's make another one, we'll call it shot 01. And in shot 01, we'll call this shot 01 intro. And what we can do is actually click in this little panel here, we'll hit Control Command A, Control Command C, and we'll just paste that with Control V into our multipass image as well. Make sure that's down. And we can change the format of this to PNG, and make sure multilayer file is ticked off, just in case, because you don't want that. For our regular image, let's make sure alpha channel is ticked on, and I think we should be good to go here. Our frame rate is 25, resolution 72, and all you do now is hit render, and that's going to render it out looking all good for you. And then obviously you'd come back in, you'd switch over to shot 2. Shot 2 is 0 to 70 frames, so come in here, change it to 0 to 70, and under our save, you would make a new folder, we'll call it shot 02, and then you would save these new CG renders with a new name inside there, just like that. So I'm hoping I'm not going too quick, but I do want to get through this fairly quickly. We'll change the multipass as well. Remember, you need to change the regular and the multipass if they want them to save in the same location. Cool, so I'm actually going to go ahead and render these out now. So I'll join you back in part 4 where we're going to do some post-production work, and we're going to just touch this up with some color grade and we're going to make it look really nice. So I'll see you then. Bye guys.